2 o'clock. Have any of you heard of Nietzsche before? Raise your hands if you've heard of Nietzsche. Okay. Have you heard of the phrase, God is dead? Raise your hand. Okay, so you're all well acquainted with Nietzsche and God is dead. That's the most important thing about Nietzsche, right? Raise your hand if you think that's the most important thing you need to know about Nietzsche, and then the rest will follow. Is this the most important thing from which everything else will follow? Okay, good. So basically what I'd like to start with is this is not very helpful for me. I prefer the slides, but I could get to them much quicker, sorry. But I would really like to start with something that will catch your attention. Ever seen a picture like this about Nietzsche? Anybody ever seen a picture like this? This was a painting about Nietzsche with a horse. Okay, you see, there are lots of things today then that you will be introduced to. And if this is the wrong thing, then I'm really happy. I want to get to the. Come on. Anybody out there? Tell the man to please come back in. Come back in, please. I've lost the PowerPoint. Where's she getting this from? Okay, so basically you have on this fly sheet the second page are a few slides from this from the slides that I'm giving here. I would have liked to have given you many more than these, but they're all on the web. So one thing you should know by now is that any lecture that's given here whatever you see on the screen there and whatever the person is speaking are all on the web, okay? You don't even have to go to Moodle. If your teachers put it on Moodle, that's great, but you can just go to AUB and scroll down on the menu on A to Z to C, Civilization Studies Program, and then you can, when that comes, you get to reading and lecture schedules. You click on 204 if you want 204, and then you get all the stuff for this semester there. I'm sure you all know that, or unless your teachers have put you on Moodle, then that's simpler for you. Okay, so basically I want to start with the famous God is dead thing here, which I could have gotten immediately if these were slides, but here I am with this, and I'm afraid that maybe deicide, here it is. God is dead, right? I'd love to have the full thing. I don't want to. It's much longer than this, but this is from the Joyful Wisdom. It's Walter Kaufmann. In his day, when he translated this one, you could still say the gay science, and it wouldn't have more than one meaning. So now that same work is translated as the Joyful Wisdom, JW rather than GS there. So God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. Yet his shadow still looms. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods, simply to appear worthy of it? This is very much the style of tragedy. When you watch good Greek tragedy, I don't know this, the lamentation in Greek tragedy is what sets tragedy apart from things that you just you incriminate people, or you say, oh, they deserve that, or this was a wicked person, or something like that. So if Oedipus the king has passed by you, that's what happens in the tragedy of Oedipus the king. The people lament him. How can somebody so great have had such a horrible thing happen to them? And that's the heart of tragedy. And Nietzsche very much is in the tragic line of thinking. If over from 201 to 204, if you took the full program, you would see how tragedy it comes back at you through a tragic philosophy of life, not just through tragedies as plays, the genre of plays, but rather as people in at various times, in various situations, believing life is primarily tragic, not rationalistic, not monotheistic, not whatever, not mystical or whatever, but that fundamentally the world is basically tragic. And so, when I was trying to read this, I read it as I would normally read something in a tragedy, where the tragic hero is confronted with something horrible that's happening, and that, of course, in Oedipus, something horrible that he himself has done, and then they lament. They say, "How could something like this happen? And what are the consequences of it?" You say, that's tragedy. Tragedy, first of all, is to recognize that horrible things can happen in this world. Don't think everything's going to be nice. But the main point in tragedy and in the Nietzschean philosophy of life, I'm claiming for you to think about, not for you to just believe, but these are to give you thoughts to think about. Basically, Nietzsche is in this tragic level of saying that he's not happy that God is dead. But that's the fact. God is dead. And therefore now, what conclusion should we draw from this? Now we don't have to worry about a hell, and we can do whatever we like, and there's no accountability. Or we can become God ourselves and be great people and all this in a sort of a cool sense. No, it's a tragic sense. An overwhelming burden has been put upon us to take the place of God. And a human cannot be a God, but we have to try to be a God. Otherwise, this world would have no meaning. And so these are some main points which I'm going to try to flesh out through the lecture. Basically, we're not dealing with your usual or customary atheist, God is dead. In other words, I don't believe there's any good evidence why I should believe in a God, and I'm going to go my own way and do what I'm doing. No, this is a tragic response to the possibility that God is dead. Because as I'm going to try to show you through all of this, against all the cliches and all the superficial things you hear about Nietzsche, because Nietzsche, why did I have so many questions up there at the beginning? There are many, many Nietzsches, and you can see, if you go through his whole life, you can see how the man himself was not static, and so that's why I started off with that picture there of Nietzsche. Which Nietzsche? Who's Nietzsche? And there should be more showing on that slide, but this is not the slides that I have on a PowerPoint. Okay, so basically, what I'm going to try to tell you, and I want to shock you right from now, so you can leave because you don't want to hear the rest of it. I'm going to try to convince you that this is the most serious. This is a very seriously religious man who is rebelling against what causes you to vomit in religious societies, where the religion has become something achy, just that this is for everybody, and it's kind of like, a visa for you to go to heaven, not to hell, and you can get around things, because you can be forgiven, and the main thing, of course, in his society was money. Get money, profits, the progress that was happening from the 18th century and the 19th century, all that progress that was happening was in the 19th century by his time. From his point of view, what he was saying, if you read through everything, his letters to the Eckermann, to his secretary, where you get his own thoughts on what he was doing, and you follow his life, he was primarily somebody, that's why we can identify him, whatever culture we're in. He was somebody not who was a nihilist as such, because the word nihilist can mean many, many things. Look it up on the web. He was a nihilist. What's a nihilist? Take a look on the web and see how many meanings there are of nihilist. A nihilist primarily means that a person who believes there's no meaning in life. We're going to be doing Waiting for Godot later as a play. There's no real meaning in life. So, you make do with what you can, but there's no serious meaning. So your meaning is going to be different from my meaning, and there are only sort of individual views of what life is all about and what meaning is all about, but finally there's no real meaning, except perhaps the meaning that there is no meaning. All right, so nihilism. But I firmly believe, after having been with Nietzsche for over, I was introduced to Nietzsche in 1961. Count those on your fingers and see how many years that comes to, all right? And I've been with him ever since, because he made I found a very deep person and was very, was attracted by him. And I started looking for people who were really Nietzscheans around me, and very few of them were actually the ones who actually believed in Nietzsche. The Nietzschean spirit is what, in a course like this, in CVSP, where it's not a philosophy course, that's the sort of thing you want to start to look at in the people you read. And whatever, especially because we're dealing with the broadest picture, the meaning at its deepest levels. That's what a history of ideas course like CVSP, a history of great books, CVSP, from Gilgamesh to Stephen Hawking and Edward Said. It's meant not to give you specialized knowledge about these. You've got the philosophy department, you've got the history department, the political science. You've got departments where you can really go into all this. In a course like CVSP in this program, we try to introduce you to things and give you some basic ideas that are clear there about them, but also to sort of provoke you to look beyond just what you get immediately on the web, or what a teacher like myself will tell you today. You should think about what I'm going to tell you today, and not just accept it. But hopefully, I want to be like Nietzsche. I want to provoke you, because he was a provocateur. He was someone who wanted to wake up a sleeping society. He was a man, a Christian in a supposedly Christian society in Northern Europe. But this was the time of capitalism and expansion and colonialism, and the European was becoming softer and softer in terms of what they were looking for in life. And you had the bourgeoisie, and you start to have what Marx later will criticize as kind of the bourgeoisie spirit, which is only interested in wealth and isn't really interested in anything serious. This was a man who was firmly committed to finding meaning in life, but for him, meaning in life had to have a certain measure of excellence. So don't think his philosophy of, when we'll talk about it, perspectivism, means he doesn't have any firm beliefs himself. If we take him seriously, he's telling us, well, don't just follow me. All right? This is my perspective, as best that I could do it at my time and my way. Don't just take my conclusions and run with them and sort of, become a Nietzschean and feel you're important because you're a Nietzschean or something like that. No, get the Nietzschean spirit in whatever you're doing, and then Nietzsche will be very happy. Otherwise, he'll be rolling over in his grave every time you sort of think you know him and you claim what he is. He is a deeply serious person who's looking for meaning in a superficial society, a society that has become mediocre and soft, and not looking for all the things that have made this society great. And they were so proud of their civilization that, of course, colonialism went off into under the slogan of la mission civilisatrice, a civilizing mission. We're going to go to all these people to civilize them. And of course, some people did that. Some people went and they built schools and they built hospitals and they tried to do good things for people outside. But the main thrust of all of this was, of course, colonialism in its worst sense. Just robbing them of their raw materials, of their manpower, etc., and of course looking down upon them as the other, as Edward Said later on will give you in Orientalism. So, coming now to the man himself, then, who obviously I'm telling you, I think he's a model for humans to follow, but not because he wasn't focusing on his conclusions. He was trying to wake everybody up. So he attacked everybody. And because he attacked everybody, everybody can then go back and find something in his works that will let them feel comfortable with him. All right? And so you need to know that there are many facets to Nietzsche. Don't think this is somebody you're going to understand by looking at the web or by getting a lecture or reading one of his books or some selections. You're going to be introduced, if you really take Nietzsche seriously, you're going to be introduced to someone who's going to really accompany you if you're a serious person looking truly for serious meaning in life, not just money and wealth and success and all this. Everybody looks for that. But what makes us, what leads humanity forwards, and this is according to him, of course, as well, he's looking for the Uberman. He's looking for the next stage of evolution. When he talks about evolution, because he accepts evolution as a physical process, but he says, I look around me and what I see is not the survival of the fittest. I look around me and I see the survival of the unfittest. It's the mediocre because they get the power and they get the thing, and they hold back the people who really can take humanity forwards, and they bring it all down in the leveling process that Kierkegaard had spoken about before him, to bring everything down to your own level so you don't have any threat. Nobody's better than you, so now you can, this is sort of what democracy, when it gets corrupt, becomes. Because democracy is an ideal, has many wonderful things in it. But from the time of the Greeks, when Thucydides was writing about the democracy of Athens, the democracy had become very, very corrupt. And we're living in a democracy in Lebanon. It's not corrupt, of course, but that's an example of a democracy. We're in a democracy in Lebanon. All right, you look around all the democracies of the world, none of them are corrupt, or they're all perfect democracies. Now, what they have in essence, of course, we don't want to lose it. We don't want to go into dictatorships and things like this. But just the slogan democracy, and we want to have a new Middle East, and it's all going to be all democratic, and all the slogans we've been hearing in the past years about making the world safe for democracy. Well, democracy, if taken seriously, is very important. But is that what people are really doing when they went on their mission civilisatrice, their civilizing mission? Is that what they did? So Nietzsche wants to cut through the hypocrisy, the mediocrity, the opportunism. And he found it in every ism of his day. That's why he's very anti-ism. Just to get you started on understanding that. Plato is a great man, starting off something that everybody has benefited from since Plato. But if you make out of Plato, Platonism, what other people take Plato and then they reinvent Plato in their own image and they do what they want, and you think that's Plato. No, that's Platonism, Habibi, not Plato. Plato, you really need to study Plato carefully in context, and you get away from the slogans of he's an idealist and he's Mabarif Shu, he's a dictator, all that stuff. If you really understand Plato, you'll separate him from Platonism, all right? If you really want to know something about Marx, you have to isolate yourself from Marxism and go back and really do a deep study of Marx, his German ideology, his Das Kapital, not just the book you read in here. So, if you're to learn anything from all of the courses we're giving you, these are the sort of things, hopefully, this would be your fourth course normally, now is maybe your second course, and who knows what you took before. But you can understand the point. Be careful of sort of thinking you're so much better than all of these people in the past because you can criticize them. Of course, if you couldn't criticize them, they wouldn't have had anything to offer. The only reason why they're great is because they offer things for people to think about and to criticize. The only good professors you ever will have in the humanities will be those who provoke you to think and to see how you can argue with them and not just reject them or accept them. And so this is the Nietzsche that I'm going to try to present to you through the things I speak about here. And I'm going to start basically with some of the slides there. So Nietzsche, I call the thing a tragic trajectory of the prophet of a dying civilization. He's very much a prophet in the broader sense of prophet, not a religious prophet, but in a sense he's doing what religious prophets were trying to do. They were the serious religious prophets of monotheism. Every one of them had to come and try to wake up a dead society and try to get them to do something and get back off their asses and to do something for humanity, because if there is a God, that God is interested in improving humanity and not giving some peaceful soporific stuff for people who call themselves monotheists or believers or in whatever. This is what Nietzsche was the God that these, because he looked at, at one point he says, you claim you have a Redeemer, a Savior, Jesus. I look at your faces, I don't see anything of Christ in there, right? If you really have a Christ, then you have to demonstrate that you're living that thing. So Christ, Christianism, all right? Marx, Marxism. Plato, Platonism. Aristotle, Aristotelianism. Means you don't have to accept everything they said at the time, but when you put it into context, you recognize what wonderful things they were doing, and then you try to imitate in your culture for the points you need to do today of what they were doing. Why am I saying this? Because Nietzsche is especially this kind of person. I want to get you into the atmosphere of this person there. And why is it important? Because he, as you will see on the fly sheets, the very first one under the Nietzschean hammer, perspectivism. He claims that every philosophy is an autobiography of the philosopher. That's what he means by perspectivism. He doesn't mean simple relativism. everything is relative. No, he has definite standards of what he thinks you should be looking for in an advanced human being, the Uberman that he will present. He has definite beliefs in what is a master morality or what is a slave morality. They're definite and they're clear there. If you think he's wishy-washy about them or that he thinks these are relative, then you haven't understood him. So you can't categorize him. And this is another thing. Don't put people into pigeonholes. Don't do it to your friends. Don't do it to people. And certainly don't do it to great philosophies or great religions or great ideologies or that. We used to call that sophomorism. A sophomore first comes in and thinks they know everything, and so they quickly can say, Plato contradicts himself here, or Marx, something, as you grow and you get to a PhD level, you'll see much more of how much you were sophomoric in this sense and how much you grow. And that's what you hopefully will do. So he was the prophet of a dying civilization, a prophet meaning somebody who's waking up something dead and trying to bring life into it. That's the proper meaning of a prophet. Right? A prophet is someone who comes into a society, not somebody who's a fortune teller and gives you some secret information about yourself or the future. Or that. This is a fortune teller. They're called prophets in some polytheistic election. But a prophet in the sense that we would understand prophet by today, either from monotheism or from literature and all of this. A prophet is someone who comes in and sees something sick in the society they're in, and they foresee something better. And they try to wake you up so that you can get that better, or they want to take you back to something which was better and that you have lost. So that, in that sense, he's a prophet, okay? So nobody get offended religiously. I'm not using any terms religiously. I'm using the terms purely humanly, everything I use here, even God. So basically, he's the prophet of a dying civilization. Is he a god? Is he a demon? Is he an angel of light? Is he a genius? Is he a madman? Is he a prophet? Or is he, as the title of one of his great books, human, all too human. And that's what he would like us to see him as. A human being, all right? But to look at his life as an autobiography, to look at his philosophy, and you have to study the whole trajectory and his life with it, and see in there a person who is, to understand what he's doing and understand, therefore, his writings, that he wants to tell us what is the human being, what should the human being be like. Any of you done Oedipus in the 201 or 205? How many of you know Oedipus, the play Oedipus? Not very many. Okay, many of you. In that play, really, the issue there was, what is the human being? That's why he answers the riddle of the Sphinx, and the answer of the riddle of the Sphinx is the human. You see? But he's searching to see what is the human. So Sophocles puts you through the whole of the tragedy of Oedipus as an exercise in helping you to see that life is about discovering who you are as a human. Don't think you know. At the beginning of the play, he thinks he knows. By the end of the play, he realizes how little he knew. All right? And that's the wisdom. Know how little you know. That's Socrates. Socrates is the wisest man in Athens because he's the only one, after investigating everything, who doesn't think he knows. He knows how little he knows. He is aware of his ignorance. And so the Sophocles play is to let you see that. And Nietzsche is also in attacking every single ism of his day. And the major ones, of course, was Christianism, not Christianity, but Christianism, not Christian, but Christianism. He was attacking that all the time. So at the end later in his life, he writes to a very famous woman. Those of you who are interested in female literature and gender, that look up Lou Andreas Salome. She was a companion of Freud and she was in this time with Nietzsche. And so he had correspondence with her. And I have one of the slides there. He writes to her and he says, I think we have come full circle, starting with religion and a religious society, and coming back and looking for the truth of religion that we have mistaken as religion. And so he says, because the faith that he was in was a Protestant faith, but don't go to that. Because it was a Protestant faith, he says, maybe we should try a Catholic faith. Maybe, we haven't looked into Christianity seriously enough. Maybe we need to look at more. So the biography of this person, the autobiography of this person, is what fascinated me as a student. After studying him and knowing all of his thoughts and the philosophy there, I came across a book which I give you here, which is the one by Reinhardt, K.R., which is, okay, I'm going to try now to go a little bit more systematically. Philosophy as autobiography, all right? the union of biography and the text and the human life. Life and text, output, biography and output, are an integral whole. Goethe, Hegel before him, and they influenced him very much, Nietzsche, had all believed this, that don't just look at the text of the philosopher, all right? Don't just listen to what is being preached. Look if the person preaching it is practicing it, all right? But in philosophy it means you're reading text. As much as you can, try to understand the person who's producing this text, the context, the situation, what was challenging that person at the time, his own personal life, his own prejudices, his own tribe. If you took 203, you would have the idols of Bacon, how the tribe and the cave and the marketplace and the theater are idols that are affecting every human being, including that. So to understand Nietzsche really deeply, you've got to at least become acquainted with his book, with his autobiography, but he thinks that Goethe's letters to Eckermann, the secretary of Goethe, were Goethe's best book. Goethe's best book is Faust. Everybody hears about Faust. That's supposedly what people really, when they think of Goethe, they think of Faust. Nietzsche, characteristically, doesn't say Faust is the greatest German book, because it was sort of, he was like the Homer of the German, everything that came after him. Goethe kind of, really was a landmark in the progression of German thought and literature. He thinks that Goethe's autobiographical notes to his secretary, Eckermann, he calls that the best German book. And part of that was because of this. To really understand something that's challenging you to think about the meaning in life, not about science or technology or something like this. That has its own, and there you have to look for corruption as well, of course. But here in the humanities and in philosophies of life and ideologies, you especially have to look beyond just the words. And for them, the best way to see this is, where are these words coming from? What are they addressing? The person themselves. And that's why on the lecture today, at one point, I'm going to try to speak about the person behind the hammer, the Nietzschean hammer, and then the person behind Nietzsche's hammer, because he thought of himself as somebody who was hammering away at everything. And in one of his texts, he says, "You never help a cause more than by persecuting it." What do you think that might mean? What does it mean? If you want to really help a cause, persecute it. What do you think that might mean? What hopefully would this do to people who really believed in that cause? Would it just get them to abandon that cause, abandon whatever it is that there? Some would. Some would say, "Oh well, then I can't go on in this sort of thing." But for him, what he thought he was doing was he was provoking the people in Marxism and feminism and Platonism and Christianism. He was provoking the people there, the best people in those fields, to reform their own views. All right? So you never help a cause more than by persecuting it, because if there is any life in it, the life will come back. If there's no life in it, well, the hell with it. Why should you want to keep it? Right? So how are you going to find out if there's something really worthwhile in a life ideology, a meaning of life thing? Well, by persecute it. Because by persecuting it, if there is something serious there, and if there are some people who are really taking it seriously and know how to reflect on it and think about it and talk about it, you'll flush it out. You'll bring it about. And so something dying, a dying civilization, the thing there, will come back to life. And in fact, Nietzsche did that for his own culture. Many people were affected by Nietzsche, not just the ones who took God is dead. And then that's what he's talking about. Those who understood what he was doing woke up and started to reform and rethink and be more serious about all the things he was attacking. And so in the 20th century, all the things he was attacking flourished. Everything he persecuted in the 19th century flourished in the 20th century. All right? And part of it was not just an accident or, sort of the determinism of history was going to happen anyway. It's people, he's not alone, you see. He's an example of different people in different cultures who are Nietzschean. All right? Not a Nietzschean in the sense of an ism, a Nietzscheism, but who caught the point. You want something, life in your culture, life in your own personal life, you need to have some life there, some vitality, some dynamism. some give and take, some not rigidity, not being comfortable and try to be have the power in the society you're in and all of that. That's the normal thing that people start with. But then as you mature as a human and a human thinker, for them, you seek the excellent in life and you start to understand the difference in your own life as well as in others. So, thus spake Zarathustra, ecce homo, in his own works are very, in a sense, autobiographical. There's a lot of autobiographical stuff there. The philosophy reflects the man, in other words. This we've seen, if you took all of the 203, certainly in Augustine in 202 and 205, you've had Augustine, his autobiography became something that you'd be surprised how many different people and different ideologies carried around his book all through the centuries between his life and much, much later, because they thought this book was just so full of wisdom and meaning for life. They weren't specialists in philosophy or theology or religious people, but they found so much in there because of this autobiographical thing. Augustine was telling you about what he came to have conviction about, but more importantly, is telling you how he came about to it. And so the process gives you a model for not accepting something simply. What he accepted at the age of 33 or so, he had rejected fully. All right? But because he was open, because he had much more experience and saw everything else, he started to understand that which he had rejected and accepts it only at 33 and then becomes, what he becomes there. So autobiography is not to be looked at as somehow second-hand important. Useful references for you. This is the book I mentioned, the book that really influenced me back in the 60s. It was fresh then. It came out in 1960, second edition. Kurt Reinhardt, but it's still very insightful if you want to really see about the whole phenomenon of existential thinking in the 20th century. Existential does not mean existentialism. Existential is a philosophy, a philosophical procedure, in fact, a philosophical method, really, of use what you do in normal philosophy. Become a very capable philosopher in the normal way. But the more you do that, the more you realize that all of what is your philosophy and your philosophical sophistication doing? It's only worth of it is that it's helping you to understand your life more, and therefore you get knowledge from life, not just knowledge from theory. This is what existential means. Existentialism, you see, is an ism. So it becomes, you follow Sartre, or you follow Simone de Beauvoir, or you follow this one, or you follow that one, or you follow Kierkegaard, or you follow Nietzsche, and you think of yourself as an existentialist. All right? No, the existential is what these people were doing. What an Augustine, what a Pascal, what a Kierkegaard, what a Nietzsche, what a Dostoevsky, what these people were doing. And they became isms in the 20th century by people following them and making them into an ism. But the heart of it, and you'll get a deep insight into that aspect of it if you get a hold of that book. It's still available, it seems, The Existential Revolt by Kurt Reinhardt. Irrational Man from that period also is from another perspective. William Barrett also helps you to understand Nietzsche in context. And there are many books there, but I'm just giving you these two. Now, when you want to look at Nietzsche, there are many Nietzsches in a philosophical way, so you see how much this man was able to do. He also gave much material that a professional philosopher can follow in the fields of epistemology and other fields like that. And so we have at our university many who are doing that. I don't know how many they are, but certainly we have one very important person, Peter Bornedal, who he's the surface and the abyss. He is a specialist in sort of getting out of Nietzsche's corpus philosophical items that can then be used for when you want to go into professional philosophy and make use of it. In his book, The Surface and the Abyss, the introduction there I found extremely useful just in a general way. The rest of it becomes technical, and if you're interested in the technical Nietzsche, of course, that book is a very, very good book. Walter Kaufmann was famous for his Nietzsche, being a follower of Nietzsche in the latter part of the 20th century. He had many works, many translations, right? And the book that we always used, but is Beyond Good and Evil, and it's in a book that my students, I ask them to buy the book so we can take a look at many things in it in different places, not just the selections you have. Because if you just look at the selections, you get some themes being dealt with. If you have the whole book in front of you, you can actually, and somebody knows the fullness of Nietzsche, he can show you various things in every one of his books, which help you to understand why this man was so attractive, why he attracted so many people in the 20th century. He attracted people from all sorts of belief systems and that, because of the spirit that was behind what he was doing. A brief biography, okay, all of this is on the web, and I don't have time to go through it now. He was born into a committed Lutheran Protestant family. He lost his father early on. Nietzsche, he enters Bonn University as a student of theology and philology, transfers to Leipzig, abandons his study of theology, encounters the works of Arthur Schopenhauer, the great pessimist, appointed chair of classical philosophy at Basel at the age of 25. And that, not very many people achieve that status at the age of 25. This was a brilliant man, in other words. Publishes his first book in 1972. That makes him less than 30 years old. The birth of tragedy. You see, one of the first things he's focusing on is the whole tragic world of the Greeks and the whole world of tragic that people have neglected, because now you're in the world of the Enlightenment. You're in the work of the computer. You're now in the 21st century. We're in the world of cognitive science and all these wonderful, wonderful things. But if we think that's going to give you the meaning of life, that's going to help you to avoid stupid things about what you think is the meaning of life. But it's not going to give you the meaning of life. It's going to help you to be critical about what you do accept as the meaning of life. The meaning of life is only going to come from life. It's only going to come from your living life and seeing many different options of how to interpret it, and by letting your own philosophy of life not just be personal in a sense, it's mine only. No, it's something that many people hold, but now it's now it's also mine as well. Because very few people wind up with one view of the meaning of life that's only theirs, and they've gotten it only from themselves, and even though they think that's what they're doing. Okay, so tragedy. For him, this is, you've got so much to learn from tragedy. And the slogan of tragedy was, you will not get insight except through suffering. All right? And now we're all in the pain and pleasure world, the utilitarianism world. Hedonism, Epicureanism, be an intelligent hedonist. Utilitarianism, to be a really intelligent hedonist, Epicurean, you have to take in the factor of society. But life is all about pain and pleasure. They're our masters. All right? Well, many people were trying to show how this is okay for law, maybe for legislation, which is what it first came out for. But when it becomes a philosophy of life, it leaves out so much. And so you had Kant, and you had Goethe, and you had Nietzsche attacking utilitarianism as what has made people soft. I mean, the kind of sophistry there, and the sort of, because it's a relativist philosophy. What is truth? That which the majority want. It's a question of statistics. What's moral? That which the majority will make the majority happy. Okay, so tragedy tells you no. Suffering is in life. But suffering is not just something you should avoid, and nobody wants suffering. But you can engage suffering, and you can use suffering to bring something better out of it. And better, first of all, in your own character. You become firmer, you become more, you understand more the depths of what a human being can do. Because when you discover that a human being can challenge fate in the tragic world, like Oedipus does, which you don't have to accept that I have to kill my daddy and marry my mommy. This was Oedipus. Why should I? I have a reason here. Why should I bother? Why should I listen to that from Apollo? Who's Apollo? What new curse do you have, Apollo? What new decree do you have, Zeus? So don't take gods as if they're some meaning, some philosophical or Abrahamic meaning of God that you have in your mind. All right, the gods of tragedy mean symbolically, the world is not for you. The world is not made to make you happy. The world has its own system, its own work, its own justice. You have your reason and your rational justice and you're all of that. Who are you as a human being? Well, you're an Oedipus, you're a Prometheus, you're an Oedipus, you're an Antigone. What does Sophocles tell us in Oedipus? He says, by doing what he did, by challenging a stupid fate, an irrational fate, not simply accepting it, he winds up doing the only one who is doing good for humanity, because for them the polis represented symbolically humanity. He saves humanity twice. All right? He's running away from where his daddy and mommy are because he doesn't want to kill them. He's only doing things with a proper, rational, moral motive behind him. So that's the message. Do what Oedipus does. And like what happens to Oedipus, don't think you're going to get a better Don't work for the reward, the bomboni, or if you go to the hospital, Habibi, or Mabtibki, I'll give you a piece of chocolate. And this mentality that we start to live only for reward of that type. There's a reward that's much deeper. The reward of a Prometheus, the reward of an Oedipus, of having done something for humanity and having dignity. So this went away with the consumer society. This went away with the sort of soft society of the supermarket, and you can get everything you like easily, and you can get pain relievers and all of that. Oh, that's wonderful. But it shouldn't take away the Nietzschean, the Promethean, the Oedipian, the Abrahamic. From every culture you can find the spirit of people who stood against monotheism starts with Abraham going against his polytheistic culture that he's rich in, his wealth and all of this, but he leaves it. He suffers when he leaves that and goes supposedly where God was telling him to go. Right? And doing doing the difficult thing and doing that, all right, he's responsible. And if you don't like monotheism, you can say you wish he didn't do that. But that's the symbolism that these people in any great culture, whether it's in philosophy or in this or that, are those who didn't let suffering be their main thing. They were not mastered by pain and pleasure as their only rational views. They were mastered by their experience. Abraham has experienced the loyalty and the goodness and the greatness of the God that he has now come to accept. So when this God asks him to sacrifice his son, well, that's what everybody was doing in Iraq at the time, in Mesopotamia. If you really had a true belief in your God, a relationship with your God, you'd be ready to sacrifice even your children, your first son, and all this. And so it was not an unusual, rational request. It was a perfectly normal, rational request for Abraham at that time because he was learning about monotheism. He wasn't a monotheist to start with. Right? Monotheism is not just a belief in one thing. It's a whole way of life. And so this is the Nietzschean anti-Christian, because he then calls himself the Antichrist. All right? But in being the Antichrist, he's going to wake people up in Christianity to take a second look about, well, what's Christ to you? Just take something like that and something, the superficial thing you look at. Go back and see what Christ is, and then you can see whether you're a Christian or not. All right? Not just because you're following someone called Christ and you've packaged it into into affecting politics and affecting other things in life. So he basically then, the tragic notion of don't, fight suffering. Avoid it where you can, of course. But if you have to make a choice of doing the right thing, but you're going to suffer, or don't do the right thing that will help humanity, then you will choose to try to do the thing that will help humanity and help yourself, because you're part of humanity. There's no split between egotism and altruism. That's a very superficial philosophical sort of thing that they want us like freedom or determinism. Are we free or are we determined? Habibi, of course we're determined. We're not, but we are free also. And you need to sort of look into how are we free, and when, it's not free or determined. Only a philosopher or a theologian can do that. No, neither the Bible nor the Quran nor Homer's works ever come down and say we are free or we are determined. Every one of them tells you have to discover in what ways you're determined and in what ways you're free, because the freedom brings in responsibility. If I'm not free, I have no responsibility. No responsibility, no dignity as a human. All right? And so, these are the deeper things of that hopefully you get introduced to before you leave university, to sort of see how, not just what they wrote. You can always get that on the web. You can always get information now, especially. But what's behind it? What made things great? Why are we where we are? We're standing on the shoulders of, we're parasites, benefiting off the greatness of people from the past in every culture, in every field. It's not just one field. Today, science or religion. Which science, Habibi? What do you mean by science? Is that such a simple little thing? Everybody knows what science. I go for science. Habibi, that's very good. We all go for science. But religion, art, all the other fields of life, there's so much truth there, existential truth, that you awaken your wisdom, and then you can package your philosophical and scientific skills and make use of them on the breadth of life, and then you get meaning from life. So, at university you're always threatened by taking a tunnel vision of what is knowledge, what is truth, what is meaning, and that's the main thing I learned at this university. 6 years I was here, and that's the main thing I learned to take away with me for life. And one of the people that helped me very much was Nietzsche. Look at the titles. The Birth of Tragedy is first one. So first one indicates, something that's going to be important in everything else. If you don't understand tragedy properly, then you won't understand Nietzsche properly. If you think tragedy is all because he was stupid or he was foolish or he should have listened or he shouldn't have gone against the gods or any of these things, you won't understand either Gilgamesh or Oedipus in 201, 205. They're full of this tragic vision, a person who challenges fate, who doesn't, not afraid of suffering, for the sake of truth, for the sake of knowing more, and then brings it back to his people, Gilgamesh, and then Oedipus, the one who's the only one who saves the city twice. Thus spake Zarathustra, the will to power, beyond good and evil, on the genealogy of morals, the Antichrist, Ecce Homo, and Twilight of the Idols. So within the 5 minutes I have left, because I'm being warned I have 5 minutes, this Beyond Good and Evil, he also subtitled it A Prelude to a Philosophy of the Future. All right? This is not a relativist. This is someone who firmly believed that there is a future waiting for us, the Uberman. But if we don't challenge each other, and if we don't challenge the sleepers and the power lovers and the pain and the pleasure lovers, we're never going to get there. Evolution isn't going to automatically take you to the next higher stage. He says, what I actually see around me is the survival of the unfittest, but he wants us to work for the future and work for a true vision of what life will be all about. Twilight of the Idols, how one philosophizes with a hammer. All right, he's hammering away at idols, things that people are running after and worshiping because they think that's the latest thing, and now this is what I want to do, and not seeing the breadth of things, even the breadth of the thing they're following. So, breaking down all idols, all isms, all superficial thinking, all superficial acceptance of religions and philosophies and ideologies and science or religion or the buzzwords as if they have any meaning as such. Ecce Homo. One of the words he writes towards the end of his life is, behold the man, you see? That's what he's telling you. I want you to read everything there. What I'm trying to tell you, what does make for great humanity? Behold the man. And of course he refers to his own Christian tradition. That this is what Pilate does when the Jewish authorities want to crucify Jesus, and Pilate comes out and tells them, I find nothing wrong with him, and they say, no, crucify him, crucify him. So he tortures him, he gets him all tortured, and maybe they'll accept that, because he sees this as a fine man, he doesn't want to condemn him to death. So he brings him out, and he tells, look, behold the man, all right? And so one meaning of it is, this is what a human being is. You want me to condemn him to death? And so, Ecce Homo, behold the man. He writes a book there in which he tells you, I hope I have time for this because I love this one, but these are just some of the people that he's influenced very heavily. In the Ecce Homo, 4 sections of it. One of them he says, why I am so wise, why I am so prudent, why I am writing such excellent books, and why I am a fate. All right. Now, if you just read it superficially, this guy, he's a nutcase. He's paranoid. He's, sure, I am this and I am this. But if you understand the whole of what he's doing, you say, look at what I'm trying to pass on to you, and that's a measure of wisdom that you can look for. That's a measure of prudence, being prudent. That's a measure of excellence. That's a measure of a fate, meaning something worth seeking. A fate is not deterministic. Fate is deterministic for some people, but a fate means what awaits you, your fate, your destiny, what awaits you. But it's not telling you what awaits you, all right? That's what awaits you if you follow my philosophy, you follow my search for excellence, the master morality, being tough on yourself, not being, all this. That's what you will there. Then now, some of the things he writes, quickly. His war strategy, to attack only matters that are victorious. He doesn't come and find something that's already been attacked by everybody and attack them already, He comes and he looks for look in your society today and at this university. What are the most popular philosophies you're being asked to follow? What are the most because I was a university student, that's what happened with me. First of all, you get exposed to what, you're being exposed to as the politically correct views, and there are a number of them, but you get all that. Now, what a Nietzsche would do, he would start to look and see which of these seem to be, just wooing, wowing everybody. And the idol of the theater from Bacon, if you took 2 or 3, any of you, wowing everybody because of that. And they're following them, not because they really understand them, but because they appeal to them. And this looks great, and this looks like it's the way of the future and all of that. You want to become a critical thinker, you need to be critical of the most popular views at the university, not outside. All right? Because it's the university world that's now very, very important in the world. Not the traditional religions and all that. The university world has become a center of power. It sets the education system. It sets what is good to be striking against. You think we're all just acting according to our reason and all of this. We are, in one way or another, being steered by the media and by the power, the people in power who affect every single institution. Money, where does money come from? We think money comes only from benefactors. Money comes from the people who want us to turn the university into an image of what they want you to do. So this is the heart of critical thinking. Understand things, don't reject or accept things simply. Understand well, comprehend, try to put it into context, try to understand the context of today, and then you can be a critical thinker about what you're being asked to accept as, this is not science or technology, but when you're being asked to form your own view of life, your own view of the humanities and all of that. Self-evaluation. War strategy, to attack only matters that are victorious, only where you stand alone without any allies, never to attack persons. You don't let the fact that it's not popular. Don't take him literally, even though it might have been applied in some ways literally to his own life. But don't be looking for allies to decide what you're going to do. Decide what you're going to do on the basis of, is this excellent? Is this futuristic? Is this really worth working for? Is this really worth dying for? Decide on that, and don't wait to have too much help there. Try to live it where you are, and then as you get more allies, of course, then you can start to affect what's happening. Never to attack persons, but to use them only as a huge magnifying glass to make visible some creeping but as yet intangible crisis. All right? Don't say, oh, he's corrupt. Well, if he is a public figure, and you can show how he's being corrupt, it's not for you to focus on that public figure whom you were worshiping before, and so now you want to put him in prison or kill him. It's for you to see the point. Look for, don't be, Heike, just taken by appearances. Look for corruption. The corruption is creeping through our society in Lebanon. Everybody's telling us. Mahek? Well, a long time ago, people were trying to get people aware. They thought they could get away with, years ago. Oh, if we just do this, that's okay, it'll timshi. But one little thing leads to a bigger thing, the ripple effect, and you start to. So you want to expose things that are happening. But the best exposition is when you find it in yourself, not to attack others. Look at what it is. Look at the objective thing that you see happening and try to fight it. Don't fight people. Don't fight persons. They're just another human like yourself. Self-evaluation. I have contradicted as no one has dared contradict. Nevertheless, I'm the opposite of a spirit of negation. I'm not a nihilist in whatever sense you think of. I may be a nihilist in some more sophisticated sense, but people, nihilist. The opposite of a spirit of negation. The bearer of glad tidings, the gospel, the